The next knowledge session, Innovation Shaping India's Defense Edge. This session will explore how innovation has become the true force multiplier, redefining capability development, strengthening self-reliance, and positioning India as a hub for next-generation defense technologies. How creativity, agility, and indigenous innovation are powering India's defense transformation. I request all of you to please start settling down. May I request the moderator of this session, Mr. Anagh Singh, to please come up along with our panelists, Mr. Ashim Ashok Patil, Managing Director and CEO, Infotek Software and Systems, i-TEK RFID, Mr. Vivek Mishra, CEO, Raphe mPhibr, Mr. Anirudh Suri, venture capitalist and author of The Great Tech Game. Anagh, have you seen Anirudh? He was here. Huh? Okay. I think we'll just give a couple of minutes for Mr. Suri to come. Why don't you take a seat? And the moment he arrives, we can start the session. I'm sure other people will also start trooping in. Mr. Suri has joined us. Thank you so much. Once again, let me quickly introduce our moderator and panelists. Our moderator is Anagh Singh, Technology and National Security Specialist. Our panelists, Ashim Ashok Patil, MD and CEO, Infotek Software and Systems. Mr. Vivek Mishra, CEO, Raphe mPhibr. Mr. Anirudh Suri, Venture Capitalist and author of The Great Tech Game. I hand over the session to you, and I've already briefed you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I know it's a bit difficult post-tea to, come back in the numbers, but we'll get started, given our respect for time and the paucity of it as well. It is a very relevant session. Innovation is no more an afterthought. We may have realized, hearing all the eminent speakers earlier, it is now almost a centerpiece of our industrial strategy, going forward our national security strategy, and our long-term operational readiness. And I think innovation in its various avatars is best exemplified by the people in the panel who have joined us. So thank you for joining us. My first question would be to Mr. Mishra. Raphe is an example of a stellar example of a success story that went bottoms up in terms of R&D. Tell us about your experience in terms of how that innovation, first of all, the innovation in terms of technology and also the ecosystem that must have evolved from 2016 onwards to 2025 in India. How easy, how difficult was it? Tell us more about your experience, please.
Thank you, sir, for the question. So it has been almost 10 years for us. And why both of us moved back to start something here was that we wanted to build technologically advanced aerospace systems for our security forces. And it was hard, and it's still hard. What, uh, what is needed for innovation is human capital, actual money capital, and a lot of time. So we started with interaction with the users on how to develop systems so that it can help them. And then we went towards multiple facets of development to make sure that we are able to make the system. Now, we had spent a lot of time in the US, and we were enjoying a good ecosystem there when it comes to manufacturing and research. But what we realized at that time was doing research here is um, yeah. So what we realized during that time was doing research here was actually more expensive than the US. And we slowly built an infrastructure around different facets of technology, be it materials, be it mechanical, electronics, software, controls, to make sure that we are able to develop a good system, because these are all the things that are required. Now, coming 10 years later, I still don't see a lot of progress like I would want, especially in terms of people wanting to invest in research, people wanting to invest in manufacturing. The other day I was posed a similar question, and my response was similar, saying that the government has been doing its part over last 10 to 14 years in spending a lot of money and a lot of time towards how to encourage innovation and research and manufacturing in India. Now it's time that private sector does the same thing, be it the companies, be it the investors. We need to spend more time and money in these two.
Sure. Taking off from that point, I'll bring in Anirudh. Anirudh, you've been an investor in the ecosystem now for some time. What is needed right now in India to actually crowd in private capital? R&D, by and large, is lopsided because it's maximum from the government, minuscule from the private sector. What can be done to actually change that?
See, I think I largely agree with what Vivek mentioned, and we were having this conversation right before. Also, I think that all arms, it's in a case where there's a chicken or egg problem, neither one can come first. Traditionally, in any industry, if you look at it, both have to move hand in hand. And as the government, as the Indian Armed Forces start to change up their acquisitions process, their focus on new emerging tech, realize that the future of warfare is changing, I think the other side has to move quickly as well. The unfortunate part, I would say, is that there's a big bridge, a big divide to be bridged today, where if you were to look at the Bangalore tech ecosystem in India today, the geopolitical objectives of India are not very deeply understood, I would say, in that ecosystem. I'm being very frank. I think sitting in Delhi, we might understand it a bit more. But there's a big divide to be bridged. I think that is the first step. I think once you understand how much importance India in the Indian Armed Forces, the Indian strategic community is placing on now the integration of tech into its operations, how the operational concepts are evolving, as the earlier speakers have mentioned, I think the first piece will have to be that more of that understanding has to seep in into the broader tech innovation ecosystem of India. Because there are a lot of entrepreneurs who could enter this space, a lot of venture capitalists who are sitting there investing in various other sectors who could start investing in this space. But there's just this, I would say, a divide to be bridged, number one. I think the second piece is probably more well known, right, which is the fact that there's one customer, which is always a concern for a private sector, private venture capitalist, or a general capital provider. I think we've seen this play out in other economies, in other countries, where often companies that start off in the defense ecosystem will eventually diversify into becoming part defense focused, part commercially focused. And I think that understanding again has to be there, that you cannot expect an Indian defense tech startup to be well diversified from day one, right? But I think both sides have to understand that. I think the private venture capitalists are correct in saying that, yes, we don't want the risk of having only one customer. I think the startup is correct in saying we can't do both day one. If I was talking about the example of a company like Palantir with Vivek also, that even if you look at a company like Palantir in the US, which is probably one of the biggest success stories to come out of the startup ecosystem there, you find that their first few years in their journey were very much focused on the defense use case, right? And it's only when that company decides that, okay, now I want to go public, I want to become a much bigger player, they start to diversify. And I think today, if you look at their public documents at least, they're about 50-50 in terms of, roughly 50-50 in terms of government use cases versus government revenues versus non, right? That's number two. Number three, I would say is you just need more venture capital funds focused on this space. We started our venture capital fund about 10, 12 years ago now, focused on the internet space. That time there were 3 or 4 VC funds, generally focused on the internet economy, right? I think the Indian defense space might be at a similar time point where there's a few, right? I think you represent one as well, but I think you need at least, I would say, 10 or 15, right? The numbers are staggering. Anduril, a company in the US, raises a $2.5 billion round, one company. Yep. And I can probably total that up. I mean, the US startups in this space and the number of US VC funds focused on the defense ecosystem are in tens, right? In India, I think our total funding this year is 300 mil, of which, Vivek, you represent a third. So that's nowhere, right? So if, again, adjusting for the size of our defense budgets, US versus India, I think India needs to be, our VC ecosystem should be a third or a fifth of the US, is what I would say it needs to be. Even if our defense budget is a tenth, our tech innovation spending has to be a third or a fifth of the US.
Sure. I'll come back to a few points that you actually mentioned, and especially about Palantir right now. I think yesterday there was an article that came out. China's answer to Palantir is oversubscribed for IPO by 7,500 times. Like, you can imagine there are certain things. And what are we missing in terms of building a Palantir here? That is also something I think innovation can generally answer. But coming to Mr. Patil, Mr. Patil, you're a new entrant into the defense ecosystem. What got you here, and what's your experience been like?
Hello. Yeah, hi. Thank you for the question. I'll just do a little bit of introduction. We are new in the defense vertical. This is the second year we are attending this show. We started our journey by coming to the show last year, but we are a 25-year-old company in doing supply chain traceability solutions and inventory management solutions across manufacturing, logistics, and retail. So we work on a technology called RFID, and the RFID technology basically is new because it has become affordable, but the technology, the first early applications of RFID were in World War II. So the technology and the physics and math behind RFID has always been there. But the commercial applications started coming since 2000, 2002. And that is when we started this journey. We have been positioning the technology against cost-effective options available like barcode. Though barcode is highly infeasible in environments, dusty, greasy, oily environments, it is infeasible in when it comes to security, because anybody can print and apply a barcode. Though RFID is far better, but always the price was compared with barcode, and that's the reason where the technology adoption took a lot of time. But unlike many other technologies, RFID became popular in India because of the government applications. It was the government of India, Ministry of Road Transport, which adopted it at a larger scale, where we see the fast tags on everybody's vehicle today. So it was the government who adopted RFID, and then RFID technology became commonly used by the private sector, unlike other technologies. Similarly, the second large application or use of RFID in India was the Indian Customs, the Ministry of Finance, where every container exported and imported in and from India is today sealed with RFID. So the government adopted the technology, and then we started getting into the retail. Why we entered into the defense sector is because we feel that there is immense opportunity here. We are in the business of object traceability in a secure form, where to increase the throughput. So wherever there is cumbersome counting processes, wherever there is an issue of visibility, wherever there is issue of inventory management, RFID has played an important role. Countries like US and many other countries in the Europe has adopted the technology, and they are far ahead in their implementation curve. And I feel that in a country like India, we are now ready, and we have been talking to various departments across the defense for various applications, and we are getting good response and good traction. A lot of POCs and pilots have started. And because of the secure nature of RFID in identification, I feel that this is a good space for us, and we are learning.
Right. One of the things that I think you brought out was that government acts as a market maker as well. Coming back to you, Mr. Mishra, I think one thing that you mentioned was about talent, and Mr. Patil mentioned about scale. I think we've done a lot in terms of bringing the innovation ecosystem to a certain sense of vibrancy in India. What more can be done? Like, what do you expect? You've traversed that journey. You've traversed the valley of death, bottoms up. What can be done to solve for scale and talent in India?
Yeah, I'll try to be honest about this. So, when we talk about talent, say for deep tech, be it software, be it electronics, be it materials, I don't think we are there. We have a very small number of people who can actually contribute to the project, and a lot of companies, if you talk to a lot of startups, even if you talk to bigger companies, they will be complaining about this. So at this point, what India has, which other countries don't, is the young human capital. And it's high time that we start thinking about how to train them to work towards deep tech rather than riding bikes. Because it takes a lot of time to not only get a fresh graduate and train them, but also people who have worked in good industries for 10, 15 years. And actually it's harder because they get trained a certain way. And first that you have to make them unlearn to make them learn again on how to do good research, how to, as simple as do a design of experiment. So there is lot of gap there, and how the industry can help is giving them that kind of work, and they can give them that kind of work when they start working on these kind of projects where it goes deep into one particular, even as small topic as it could be. Everybody doesn't need to build systems. You can go very deep into one small subsystem and then make not only a good technology, but a great business out of it.
Anirudh, coming to that, I think I'll pose a similar question. Mr. Mishra tried to understand, like basically explain a couple of elements to that. But in terms of sustenance of innovation, which has a long gestation period, what more can be done via the defense ecosystem and otherwise as well? How do we evolve that ecosystem to be as vibrant as, say, the American military-industrial complex or the Silicon Valley or, different, or the Israeli complex? What can be done more?
So let me break that down. I mean, it's a big question, right? So let me break it down into three pieces. One is the talent piece, which Vivek has spoken. I'll add a couple of points on that. The capital piece. And then the third, let's say, is the broader institutional / ecosystem piece, right? Now, on the talent piece, see, now Vivek, for example, if I may, now you're an example of someone who's come back after doing a PhD in the US, you and your brother, as you were mentioning. Now, you come back, otherwise you have the option of staying there, becoming part of the defense tech ecosystem in the US, let's say. If you look at the US defense tech ecosystem, there's a lot of Indian talent also, much like in other parts of Silicon Valley, even in the defense tech space, right? You have a lot of Indian origin folks. Now, to bring that talent back, what do you have to give them, right? One, you have to give them, I think, capital to have them be secure in the fact that what they want to do, the vision that they can have the time and the resources to build that out. Right? I think you were mentioning that in some way or the other that you needed that infrastructure to be built out. You need to hire best talent, right? I mean, you're not going to be, one person is not enough. Yep. You need a massive team. That entire set of talent that you need to hire and retain will need money, right? Will need capital. And then I would say the third thing that I think sometimes we miss is the fact that smart people want to be working in a ecosystem of smart people. Mm-hmm. That's why the US university ecosystem, in my view, remains the best, because it's the best working along with the best, so everyone's feeling challenged, everyone's feeling like they have to compete. So I think we have to create a critical mass of great talent working on maybe very specific needs as have been identified by, let's say, the Indian Armed Forces, the Indian government, etc. But you need to have, let's say, across 8 or 10 subsectors, at least 6 to 8 teams in each of those subsectors, very carefully identified, nurtured, funded, so that out of those 6 to 8 to 10 in each subsector, with them competing, hopefully 1 or 2 champions will emerge in each. Right? You cannot say that I'll place my bet on only one. Right? You have to have competition. Ultimately, competition is the best driver of innovation. So you have to remember that we have to actually nurture competition in the defense tech ecosystem for us to have the best innovation. Otherwise, our innovation will remain subpar because we'll be not competing with the best of the world. Yep. Right? And then you'll always have either a subpar product, which will not either be best on quality or not be best on price or neither. Yep. So I would say that if we look at the talent capital and then the ecosystem piece, then we really can create, I mean, and there are examples to learn from, not just the US or China, by the way. There are other countries that have in specific subsectors of the defense ecosystem built out globally competitive industries, whether it's in drones, right, or in cyber, or in others, let's say, other domains. Countries have, within a span of, let's say, I would say, 5 to 10 years, built out globally competitive industries, right? So I would say that that's the crux of what I would suggest.
In general, I think, as an advice to emerging startups, all of you, do you think it is important to be customer backwards or technology forward? How do you solve that riddle for a startup trying to enter the defense tech field? I'll give it to answer.
Yeah. See, there are 2 areas which are generally where the fork comes. One is the research side of the business, and another is the application side of it. So there is a technology, either you get into the physics, math, and the science part of it, and try to further develop it, make it simpler, make it richer, make it feature rich. And another side of the business which startups can do is use that technology and find different kinds of use cases and applications of the same thing. So nothing is right or wrong. It is basically what you are equipped for and where the market is leading you to. And when I started the business 25 years ago, or when we are entering into defense, we are like a defense startup, 1-year-old startup in defense. So I think we are more from the understanding the problem statements of the defense sector and trying to apply the solutions we already have in other sectors in this particular sector.
Sure.
So this is our approach, and this we feel is a low-hanging fruit for us, wherein we can do some quick pilots, quick POCs, learn from the industry stalwarts, integrate it with other technology solutions, because at the end of the day, we are a system integrator. Any system is a subsystem of a larger system, and that is what we understand. So for us, the approach is to start with solving the problems with use cases which are relevant, using the various applications of the technology, and then the second layer would be to try to make it feature rich and do the relevant research in that field.
Mr. Mishra, I'll pose the same question to you. In terms of technology forward, because you have been, a pioneer in terms of R&D, especially in the UAV space, or is it customer backwards? How does that riddle actually pan out?
See, it has to be customer backwards, especially for the field that you're working in. What has happened over last 10 years is that we have seen the space slightly opening up for our interaction with the users. That needs to increase at least 10 folds. Because I can develop an amazing drone using LLM which does that, hey, go left and it will go left. What does it do to the user? So it needs to be attuned to what the user wants. We should go study the operational environments. We should go study what the user needs, where are they facing challenges, what could be the next challenge. Thinking about that, a technology can be developed which could be readily adopted, because most of the times it happens that you're developing something which is amazing, but you don't have subsystems or ecosystems to convert it into a system which could be useful to the user. So you could be developing amazing technology, but again, it's not going to be bought. And then the business struggles. So it has to be user-oriented. And uh, what I can feel is that we are opening up towards when it comes to industry and defense forces collaborations, but it needs to increase a lot, so that we are able to provide the solutions and predict what is going to happen in the future vis-a-vis other technologies which are with our adversaries, and provide these solutions.
Right. Anirudh, I'll leave the final word to you in terms of, what should the next exciting framework for defense tech, in general innovation around this area look like for India and for the ecosystem in general?
Sure. Let me add one thing to what Vivek was mentioning. I think one of the best ways to answer earlier question of customer or tech forward, one of the interesting things, some of you who track this would have noticed that what the US has done, for example, let me take an example there. They've inducted some of the private sector folks into the army. A lot of the army veterans have moved to the valley to set up either venture capital funds or start their own companies. And then there's a combination, right? So I think that kind of infusion is critical here also. Where I think the Indian armed forces should consider inducting many folks from the tech world who might not be customer forward in the operational context, but bring them in, and vice versa. A lot of the Indian veterans who have that inclination should then actually be encouraged and supported to start up, because they'll have that operational experience and context understanding very well, which is not easy to gain in a year or two. It's not like if I'm sent to the border or if I'm sent to a site, I'll suddenly understand everything. Right? It's not a thing to pick up. But I think it's that kind of fusion of the talent from both worlds which is the bridge I was talking about earlier, which I think is critical for us to really accelerate, maybe 10x, maybe 20x, right? And I think that that's what could really cause a real acceleration in the kind of innovation, user-focused innovation that we can see in India. So I mean, I'll wrap up my
Sure.
thoughts there.
We can have one question from the audience, if at all, any questions anybody would want to have, panelists. I don't see it. Is there anyone? I think that's been quite an discussion around innovation and innovation frameworks. I think there's a lot to be done. A lot has been done. And I think it will remain the centerpiece of our industrial strategy and our national security strategy going forward. And I think it's a whole of government approach that earlier was also mentioned that would matter for innovation to fructify and turn into products and turn into user-centric commercialization policies that would ultimately reap benefits for the larger ecosystem. So thank you so much for joining in, and thank you so much to all the panelists for their views and opinions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anagh. And may I request Brigadier S.K. Chatterjee, retired, to please present mementos to our moderator and panelists. A memento to our moderator, Mr. Anagh Singh, Technology and National Security Specialist. To Mr. Ashim Ashok Patil, Managing Director and CEO, Infotek Software and Systems. To Mr. Vivek Mishra, CEO, Raphe mPhibr. And Mr. Anirudh Suri, venture capitalist and author of The Great Tech Game. Thank you so much. I request all of you to please stand together for a photograph, a group photograph. So this session was a thought-provoking one on India's innovation ecosystem, and it is clear that the defense sector's future edge will be forged not just in factories and labs, but through the spirit of innovation that runs across our services and industry.